Welcome to Tuesday Newsday, your number one resource for the entire week's worth of VR news. From completely new Ready Player One-esque VR shoes aiming to kill the omnidirectional treadmill, to a brand new feature-packed open source VR headset that's on the way, to one of the biggest performance Quest 2 updates we've seen yet. I hope that everyone had an amazing Christmas and holiday, but VR's now in season and we've got a lot to cover today. So let's just get right into the news. Let's start this one off with something that I've been really excited about. Last year, I talked about a brand new VR headset that was announced, the Somnium One. At the time, announced to be some sort of open source device releasing at some point, but after the initial announcement, everything went pretty much dark on the Somnium. That is until now. And from the information that we just got, I'm not only a little excited about this headset, but depending on a few factors, this could be my next main headset, at least for PC VR. But let's get into the specs first. The Somnium One is set to have two 2880 by 2880 fast LCD panels, so the same resolution as the Vario Aero, but with a 120-degree field of view, which is around the same as the Valve Index. Also with built-in Ultra Leap hand tracking, eye tracking, native Steam VR tracking, all of that's looking awesome, but here's where it gets really cool. This headset will also feature direct mixed reality pass-through, have the option for both typical lossless wired mode like we've always seen, and a wireless Wi-Fi 6 PC VR streaming mode, meaning you can just drop the wire. The really cool part about the Somnium One is its completely open source and modular nature, featuring 3 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C ports for pretty much any accessory you can think of, like face tracking or a BCI, or having the ability to add different modules or make entirely new modules or even change head straps. Really anything you need for any purpose, you or anyone else can just make it. The only problem is that I haven't seen this headset in person or working at all yet, so I kind of need to see it to believe it, but turns out in just a couple weeks they will be showing the Somnium VR1 at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and I will be attending, so I'll be able to give you guys the full scoop on it in person very soon. And to give a little credence to the project, Somnium has partnered with VR engineers for this project, and that's the same company that makes the truly insane XTOL that the Air Force uses, for example, so it'll definitely be interesting to see. And speaking of CES, you'll definitely want to be on the lookout on this channel around that time, because not only is this headset going to be there, but so is HTC with their new headset, Pimax with all of their new stuff, and supposedly some PSVR 2 stuff, and then some also unannounced VR stuff. And I will be covering all of it in person, so hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you want to get the full scoop as it's happening. But now let's talk about some Meta news and this pretty massive update for the Quest. And well, Meta just announced that you can make up to $45,000 by hacking the Quest Pro, and the Pro controllers. So Meta has always had this bug hunter system where if you find an exploit for any of their devices and report it to them so they can fix the problem, you'll likely get paid. For smaller exploits and bugs like, for example, sneaking an app around user permissions, you can get paid anywhere from $500 to $3,000 as long as the exploit is qualified. But to hit cash outs like the $45,000 that I talked about, you'd probably need to figure out a major exploit like remote code execution. And Meta just added new guidelines as they're trying to figure out if there's any security flaws with specifically their Pro controllers and the Quest Pro, since they're two new devices entirely. And these payouts have actually been pretty substantial, Meta having paid out around $2 million to hackers this year. And out of the 10,000 reports, 750 of them have qualified for a payout. And this whole thing makes sense. It's pretty normal for the industry in general, because really, bug catcher systems like this end up being a whole lot cheaper than a $1 billion lawsuit because someone figured out how to turn a Quest 2 into a spy cam. So hack away and get paid. 45 grand is on the table. But now finally onto the Quest stuff. So honestly, I've been pretty surprised and impressed with the Quest 2 and how much Meta has been able to squeeze out of it. Since launch, it's gotten so many updates, from AirLink to hand tracking to fixed foveated rendering. The device for the most part has just gotten better and better, I guess besides for the few updates that break things. But this most recent update adds quite a bit, even though it feels like it's kind of just a little something to cushion the blow of John Carmack leaving the company. But that's besides the point, because the Quest 2 just got a 7% total performance upgrade, done completely by a software update. And this update increases the GPU's clock from 490 MHz to 525 MHz. And while that may seem like a small clock upgrade, 7% is quite a bit, and it will be noticeable on both the development side of things and the typical usage for just about everything. And when you're working with a mobile processor, literally every smidgen of power can and will be used, and this is substantial. And for every single app that may currently struggle or occasionally drop a few frames here and there, that 7% boost means overall better performance when you need it most. And for newer titles, or for any current title really, if a developer wants to take the time, they can now either increase the base resolution or add a little flare, or what I think we'll see most of is increased texture resolutions. Just in general, Quest 2 games will and should look and perform just a little better. A particular case where this would be really noticeable in the future is something like Bone Lab, where the foveated rendering can get really egregious on the standalone version. And this extra headroom is specifically for that, allowing the automatic foveation to be turned down just a little bit. Although I should say that this isn't a totally integrated solution yet. I mean, there's nothing developers or yourself need to tick in settings for this to work, and it should be working for pretty much any Quest 2 on V47 or later. And by that, I mean it just uses the extra headroom automatically when it needs it. But currently, you can only activate the setting by opening the app and then either taking off the headset and putting it back on, or by performing a sleep cycle, i.e. pressing the power button once to go to sleep and then pressing it again to wake it up. And I'm not sure why you gotta do this, but Meta just said this is what you gotta do to make that extra power available. However, after V49, whenever that comes, this will be completely unnecessary, as this feature will always be available and turned on. And I feel like I should also mention that while this clock update is awesome, the Pico 4 actually has the exact same GPU, but still runs at a higher clock even, at 587 MHz, leading to games like Red Matter having a visibly higher resolution and games looking better in general. And I'm still working on that headset review, by the way, it's gonna be a good one. But this means that it's pretty plausible that we may be getting more performance updates like this in the future. It's clear that there is more headroom, it maybe can be pushed even further, the Pico 4 being a clear example. It's just a matter of Meta actually doing it, or whether or not the Quest 2's cooling can even handle it. Which makes me think maybe I should release that unreleased video of me doing water cooling on the Quest 2 again. I wonder how far we could actually push this thing if we could overclock it. But now it's time for a meme break! So, looks like the Quest 2 has been selling extremely well this Christmas. The Quest app is on top of the App Store, and so many people are going to be getting into VR. This is so great, I just can't wait. And now, back to the news. So I've been incredibly interested in omnidirectional treadmills and alternative forms of locomotion for VR for a long time. From the catwalk to big Ready Player One setups, really I just kinda don't like having to always use the thumbsticks for VR. They are an easy solution and they do work, but after feeling how immersive walking and running in a virtual world is, I just know that there's gonna be a better way to do this in the long term. And recently I've seen a brand new company pop up showing off something that actually looks pretty darn impressive. These are the Free Aim VR shoes. A set of supposedly lightweight shoes with rollers on the bottom that provide foot tracking, haptic feedback, kinetic feedback, and allow you to walk somewhat naturally in VR by just walking. The demo showing someone walking in Skyrim with a pretty normal looking walking gait. But the technology they're using is a little more complex than it seems at a glance. These aren't just roller skates that you strap on your feet blindfolded. Instead, each shoe is essentially what they call an intelligent autonomous robotic vehicle miniaturized into a shoe, using omnidirectional wheelbases and motors to 1, keep you in the center of your play space no matter what, and 2, keep you from slipping. And from the demos, it actually looks pretty darn good. Maybe a little clunky, but this is a prototype that's still in development. And I think some of the most impressive parts that I'm seeing from the Free Aim shoes are the fact that the developers state that this will be a much cheaper solution to something like the Catwalk slide mill. And obviously it doesn't take up quite the size of the slide mill and certainly weighs less. Plus this has something called kinetic feedback, a feature that I've never seen before, but it looks really interesting. The example that they gave us is, say a building explodes in front of you in VR. The shoes will move you back just a little bit, which that combined with the audio and visual and haptics apparently make a really immersive experience, but I'd have to try it out for myself. One thing I did notice, however, is that they didn't show or recommend running, which is one thing I do like about the Catwalk. Instead, only recommending fast walking. And really, these things just take a lot of money and time time to manufacture and bring to a mass market, and the company is stating that they're looking for investment to bring these to mass market. But this is right up my alley, and it's something that I will definitely be testing as soon as I can get my hands, or I guess feet, on a unit. Like I said, I've always been really into this sort of thing, and I'd be interested in comparing its usability and prospective price directly against the newest catwalk. Valve recently made some pretty big changes to the Steam store regarding all VR content. They say as a change to, quote, keep up with the growing VR market, end quote. And a lot of people got into a tizzy last week about it when they saw the VR support section was removed from games on the Steam store. At the time, only leaving a tracked motion controller support icon. But Valve said that they did not remove the VR support tag from the Steam store. Instead, they just moved around things and streamlined the experience. So now, VR supported apps just look a little bit different. Now, all games that have VR support will either have VR only or VR supported next to the game with flags for those two sections, as well as a tracked motion controller support flag. And it's kind of a weird change. I didn't really see any particular reason to change it, but it's done, so here it is. But I do gotta wonder, why even change this now? So one of my favorite VR games of all time, actually one that goes really under the radar most of the time, is about to get its long-awaited sequel. Vertigo, actually one of the original 2016 classic VR games, later getting a sizable update in the form of Vertigo Remastered, bringing its 2016 mechanics into the modern age, has had its sequel, Vertigo 2, announced for March 30th, 2023. And something that's pretty interesting is that you can go and play Vertigo 2 demo right now for free and get a feel for it. And now's a really good time to do it whether you've played it or not, because the entire demo has been overhauled to reflect the state of the full sequel. So go ahead and download it and give it a go, it's free. Vertigo Remastered has long lived in my mind as just a great VR game with an entertaining and fun story and some good mechanics, so I'm excited to see what's coming next after years of waiting. But now it's time for question of the week, and this week we have a good one. From Andy, how do you feel about location-based VR like the now defunct Void Star Wars experience? And I actually answered this in the comments, but I thought it was such a good question that I'd answer it here too. And I think location-based VR can be really cool, but at least from the locations I've been to, I don't think nowadays in 2023 they offer anything significantly better than off-the-shelf solutions. And in many situations, they're pretty outdated and offer worse experience than just buying a Quest 2 or having a PC VR setup. And the only way that I could see location-based VR working really well, at least now in the era where you can buy a cheap VR headset, is to bring truly next-level insane VR experiences. Something that you can't really do at home. And not just because they won't let you download the games at home, but to make the hardware and software and environment something totally new and cool and different. But this sounds pretty expensive and also sounds like it would require a pretty crazy marketing push, so I'm not sure if we'll see that anytime super soon. But that was question of the week, so make sure to leave your own down below and I may just answer yours next. And I want to say thank you to all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Omegas. I couldn't do any of this without you. And don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Grill out.